Yes, round two had it all. Some close games, some surprises, and Adam Reynolds back for his first game for the Broncos. 2-0, the Broncos. How did we see his first game for Brisbane?
I think he did what everybody expected him to do. He plugs in the other players. You know, that's what he was known for at South Sydney. That's what South Sydney are missing. That's what he was brought to the Broncos to do.
On the right side, his defence was outstanding in the latter stages. You notice that? He saved a try or two. Desperation, and it's not normally, the area we talk about. And his kicking game was great, probably not as good as Matt Burton's, but he steered beautifully.
He was only a shandy behind Matt Burton in terms of his all-round kicking game, but he just adds a calmness. He can read the tempo of the game perfectly. He knows when to speed it up. He knows when to slow it down. It's a shame Katoni Staggs didn't ground that ball properly, because that try would have been on all highlights reels for the rest of the season. But the Broncos, they do just appear to be more fluent with a proper number 7.
It was a standard Adam Reynolds performance, right? Like, not setting the world on fire, not individual brilliance, but his kicking game was 5-star. His organisation was great. He took focus and emphasis off the players around him. He took the pressure off his side, just with the one percenters, really, that he just executes supremely every week. And that's what South are missing. We'll talk to Cooper about that later on when he comes on. But yeah, he just relaxes and eases the stress from the rest of the team, doesn't he?
I think if you're Kevin Walters, you just sit back and you think, you know what, I'm so happy with the decision we've made to bring him to the club, because he did exactly what he was brought there to do, and that's all you want out of him. Yeah. That's all they ever want.
I also think if you're South Sydney, you'll sit back at the end of the season and say they've made 2 of the most questionable recruitment decisions in recent history in letting Adam Reynolds go. And Dane Gagai has been on absolute fire at the Newcastle Knights, playing on the right edge.
Yeah, and they're both, the loss of both those players are quite obvious in the South Sydney.
Yeah, they are. Trent Barrett, he blew up after the game. A couple of dodgy calls, he believes, with Farnworth, the 2 Farnworth tries. This one here was the obstruction play as he hits the outside shoulder there.
Barrett's 100% right.
That's a penalty every day of the week.
Yeah, this one is a penalty. I agree. In my belief, this is a penalty. He hits the outside shoulder of Burns. Burns cannot then release even that split second, and Ockenbaugh then looks in and commits.
It's only minor contact, but the rule is the rule.
But why didn't the bunker get involved in that?
Well,
and that's what we had an argument about this last week. All we want is common sense, and the big word is consistency.
We're never going to get that, Phil. We've been arguing about that since Adam was in nappies.
They're taking tries off other teams for very similar things, and this one they just didn't bother.
Yeah, but the bunker would have looked at it, Buzz. They just would have said it was okay.
They would have looked at it, not ruled.
Because Braden Burns didn't go down. Because Braden Burns didn't take a dive. That's the inference that Trent Barrett is suggesting, is that if this is the way the game is going, then I'll coach Braden Burns to go down.
Which is This is the failing of the officials, because if Braden Burns had done the theatrical dive and fallen down, we all would have blown up at that go, like, seriously. But if he needed to do that to underline that he'd been infringed upon, then he's going to have to do that, isn't he?
We don't want rugby league.
I know we don't want that, but that's why the bunker they should be dead set putting their hand up and saying, we apologise. Doesn't mean anything for the Bulldogs now. Like, poor old Bulldogs.
Yeah, we can't be making decisions or officiating depending on the reaction of the player and the defensive line.
Well,
that's ridiculous.
But they're doing that, though. That's the problem. We saw that in the Saints game. The NRL told the Dragons late in the game that if Ben Hunt, when he got shoulder charged, had gone down, then they might have ended up in a sin bin. But because he didn't go down, because he just played on, I didn't stay down.
And Jaden Sewell was sitting there because Sean O'Sullivan did stay down.
Yet a week ago, we had players, right, to Anthony Griffin's point, players going down. As soon as they were down and not getting out, Victor Radley, Category 1, you're off. Sean O'Sullivan, a week later, they've already gone back on their decision-making.
Yeah, but Kenny and Jack Bird, and I know it's not related to a decoy or a high tackle or a tackle on the halfback, Jack Bird had a bleeding nose and was whacked in the concussion bin. For a bleeding nose.
I know.
He got kneed in the head.
But it was a bleeding nose, Jimmy. He wasn't hurt.
One of the things about this, though, is if players... No fan likes players milking penalties. And one of the results from ramifications of the new concussion protocols was it discouraged players from laying down and faking injury in a bid to try and milk a penalty, because that could actually mean they would get taken off. But one week later, we're only in round 2. They've already backflipped on all that. Like, how are the coaches supposed to know what's happening this week? How are teams supposed to? If you have an incident where you get brushed, you have to now do the theatrical dive because you can get up after round 2. You can stay on the field. After round 1, you couldn't stay on the field, but after round 2, you can. So what happens in round 3? Like, it's just a dog's breakfast, and they've got to start. I don't know what they do in there. Some days.
Well, that was just black and white though. A player coming through on the outside shoulder, clipping the outside shoulder, so that the inside defender can't release when he wants to. That's just a penalty.
100%.
It's just every day of the week a penalty.
And yeah, there was a period some time back where we had discretion, where we looked at whether there's sufficient force and all that, and that was confusing everybody. So now it's just black and white. If there's contact, it's a penalty. There was contact. There was clearly contact. Like, I don't know. Like, who is making these decisions?
I don't know, Kenny. I don't know. We'll keep asking. Now, off the Peng guy, I mean, he was fired up again. We saw it in the trials, and he proved costly to the side in the trials, but it's a fine line. I mean, he's just come on the field. He comes in on Payne Haas, and this is unnecessary. I mean, he gets away with this one, but he's a high risk. He's a high risk. Is he worth the risk?
I think the best thing the Bulldogs did with Tavita Pangai last night was play him in the middle. To me, Braith, he's far more effective. One of his best games of the year last season, and he ended up getting injured, was in that final against Melbourne, where he went on and he took on the biggest Storm forwards. As Trent Barrett said last night, he is that X-factor player, and he does red line right to the maximum. Yeah, but there's times where he tips over. That second shot here on Haas was completely unnecessary. There was an off-the-ball incident with Jordan Ricky, again, unnecessary. And he gassed himself. He looked as though he was actually exerting a lot of energy he was that wound up emotionally that he was actually quite gassed pretty early on.
They're going to have to harness it, because if you've got Pangai, a potential sin bin risk every week, Jack Hetherington is also a sin bin risk every week.
He's been good, Hetherington.
He has been good.
He's on an edge,
I know, but he has been good, Buzz. But he has got form.
He walks a line.
He has got form, and look, he's obviously addressing that. But you just can't have too many of them in your side. And when you pay these guys the bucks that they're getting paid, I'm talking about Pangai here, you've got to have him on the field.
Yeah, Pengai's a really good player, and he can add a lot to this side if they can just rein it in. But he's showing no evidence of that. But if they can rein him in just a tiny bit and use his energy in the right way, he could be invaluable to them. He's powerful. He's got footwork. He's fast. He's got an offload. They need that, because they need to create opportunities. They need second phase play. He could be so good for them in attack.
If you're playing with him, what would you say to him?
Well, mate, you've got to put the team first. Yeah. The way he plays is as an individual, and that's never going to work. And the Bulldogs need discipline. They need to set standards. They need to work as a team to reach the ultimate goal, which is to win games and win a premiership. And he seems to be running his own show out there. And, and that just doesn't work in a team environment.
Your old teammate Willie Mason's out there working very closely with the Bulldogs. When you were playing with him, Willie used to at times tread a fine line too. Did he ever get to this stage where he was that close
Willie
to the
was
edge?
a freak, mate. Willie was one of the fittest forwards I've ever played with. You know, he ran the 40 metres quicker than all the backs and trained harder than anyone. He was a larrikin, had a bit of fun, and he did, I suppose, get close to that line, but he was nowhere near Pangai. I mean, but he's the best person for him. He's the best person for him. I mean, I believe that they'll get him right. I do. I really believe they will.
And forget about the Gus relation. He's done a lot of one-on-one with Pangai Jr. And Gus should be able, if anyone's going to convince him, as you said, put the footy side first. And he can play as aggressive as he wants, as tough as he wants, but he's going to cost him in a game. And it might just be a penalty, it might even be a sin bin. Oh, that game was so tight yesterday, and you just can't carry on like a mug on a footy field these days.
Now, Buzz, the Tigers, Sheens has called for calm, and he's backed the coach Maguire today.
Yeah, look, I ranked Tim Sheens today, and I thought I'd find him angry after yesterday's loss to the Knights. It was a really, really poor performance, and in my view, I don't think they competed. And I know they've got injuries, and they don't have Adam Dewey there, but they've got a $900,000 halfback in Luke Brooks, and I thought Jackson Hastings played well. But Tim wouldn't have a bar of being critical of anyone. He threw his full support behind the playing group and his full support behind Michael Maguire, and pointed out that the competition's 2 weeks old, that we sat around, or I did, calling for Des to go after 4 rounds last year. He wants to be patient. He said there will not be a knee-jerk reaction at the West Tigers, and he wants to give him more time. Now, whether he's in that mood in a month's time, Kenty, if they keep getting rolled, I doubt it.
They were insipid yesterday.
It's the way they get rolled too.
They were insipid.
The
Newcastle
concern,
beat them with
though,
energy and effort.
The concern, though, is you're getting down on energy and effort in round 2. You can understand it if you have a mental week off after rounds 11, 12, 13, you get into that origin period, you got through the slog of the season. Round 2, they haven't turned up.
But you know,
to me,
from an outside point
that's
of view,
a lot of alarms.
it looks as though they lack leadership. Michael
They
Maguire
clearly
made the
do.
decision over the off-season to appoint 5 captains. I think that was basically a case where Adam Dewey's injured until the middle of the year. He's the best candidate, so he decided that everybody...
Ken Mamalo was the captain yesterday?
Yes.
And he was on the wing.
Yeah.
You know, I've
But
watched
guys-
Ken Mamalo play for a long time now.
Yeah.
And he looks like he's as quiet as a mouse. And on the wing, how's he going to have an impact on that side and lead that side from the wing? Like, that's...
But you
it
know
doesn't make
what,
sense.
captains, it says you haven't got one captain. That's what it is.
But Kenny, we
ridiculous.
saw it on Tales of Tiger Town last year. No one else but Madge spoke in the sheds at half-time or at full-time. And what you've also got, what makes the West Tigers' performance worse is that Clemmer, Brayley, Ponga and Saifida were all that. They're their 4 highest paid players. Newcastle was seriously down on troops.
Well,
Well, no,
Benji
this,
Benji
is
said...
this is one of the co-captains here.
Yeah.
Come up with the world's dumbest plays.
Yeah. I mean,
It's the same thing.
Benji's the next legend.
Well, what do you
he
think
said,
is
he said
a
it wasn't
smile?
first grade standard. He said it wasn't first grade standard.
Do you-
And
how
he's got
long's
every right
Madge
to say
got then?
that.
Spot on.
How long's Madge got?
Look, I've said it, I don't think Madge is the problem.
What's the problem?
The players. And I don't know, look, I think the CEO's got to
roster?
start
Is it
getting...
the roster
The roster's terrible. It's not...
It's hopelessly been out of shape.
It's out of shape. There's players there that are not Michael Maguire players. James Roberts has never been a Michael Maguire type player. Michael Maguire's... He wants tough, relentless... James Roberts is... You know, he's had to be cajoled his whole career. He's got super talent, but he's never fulfilled that.
Yeah, but hang on, Kenty. In fairness, Madge fought to keep James Roberts
Yeah,
over
that
this
doesn't make
summer.
sense.
They
I don't
put him
know
on a
why.
train and
Yeah.
trial
Yeah.
contract,
Only 'cause
and
he was
Madge went
desperate.
in to bat for him. Well,
He was desperate.
Yeah, but he's made that decision. So as the
there's no
head
other
coach,
centres.
he has decided to give him another
So the damage done
contract.
before Madge got there with the... I mean, they've always paid overs for players who haven't delivered it. And did he pay the price with the roster he's taken on, or has he just not achieved?
No question, there was
Underachieved since.
an epic hangover when Ivan Cleary upped and left them to go back to the Panthers because he'd signed a variety of different players on long-term contracts, big money, and it bit them on the arse
Brace-
big time.
And it also happened when
Yeah.
they lost the 4 players, or 3 of the 4 players.
But you know what, guys?
Tedesco,
Yeah.
Woods and Moses.
It's interesting, all our focus now is West Tigers. They play the Warriors this week. And why doesn't anyone talk about Nathan Brown under similar sort of pressure? And I rang Aaron Wallace today to get Brownie's finishes, and he had, last 5 years, 2 wooden spoons, 2 11ths in Newcastle, the 12th with the Warriors last year, and they're 14th. And they do have as good a roster as the West Tigers, probably a better roster. And they played this week. They're both none from 2. And I think we should be talking about Brownie.
Well, I think he spoke about it after the game. His frustrations were clear. You know, he's disappointed. You know, and you don't see that very often from Nathan Brown. So I think he's understanding that he is under pressure. The side isn't performing the way he wants to, and he's not happy about
He's
it.
got
the
a
difference between-
26% win record in the last 6 years.
But he took over a night side that was decimated.
Yeah.
Okay. The difference between, and this is, I think, one of the major problems for Michael Maguire at West Tigers, is I think with all the uncertainty, with everybody questioning his job, with the playing group as poor as it is and as soft as they are by first grade standards, he can't coach the way he wants to coach because he's got to mollycoddle them and he's got to keep the players on side, because the minute he loses the dressing room, then he's got to be out, because it's always cheaper to sack the coach than it is to sack the players. So he's been, I suppose, what's the word? Like he's just been disarmed as the coach. He can't get in there and do it the way he wants to be done because it's so fragile there at the moment. So he's trying to just nurse everything through. He's just trying to, let's just softly
but at the same time, it's not going to work.
It's not working.
At the
clearly
same
not
time,
working.
Kenzie, this is his
But if he comes
fourth
in,
year. This is his fourth season in charge.
Yeah, that's
and the
true.
results have got progressively worse. As Braith pointed out, absolutely, he inherited an awful sandwich. Like it was.
I know
it was a bun fight when he got in there, right? But the issue now is it's manifested.
Mate, they
and it's
kill
got
the run nights now, the Tigers.
100%.
Kenny, I reckon in a month's time, they've got to make a decision, the West Tigers. There's two old hard coaches out there without a job. I'm talking Paul Green, premiership winning coach, and Shane Flanagan, premiership winning coach. They are hard men. And I think the West Tigers need tough love. They don't need that.
Madge is a hard man and he's a premiership winning coach too.
Kenty just said he's had to tread softly.
That's because his hard edge approach didn't work for him because they all got their feelings hurt. So he had to change.
Yeah, well, maybe it's time to change the roster.
I think
the Luke Brooks situation is fascinating. He asked for release twice. He played on the weekend, and I don't want to... But he was behind a beaten pack, but he was poor for a $900,000 halfback.
Yeah, I don't know.
And if you ask for release twice, it means you don't want to be there.
I wonder what the board's doing, what their solution is.
Well, this is the thing, Kenny. I mean, they've been going around in circles for years.
They have.
Going around in circles, different coaches. They've had every coach under the sun who coaches all different styles, and it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Well, Madge was all but out the door at the end of last season when they did the big review, and then at the 11th hour, he convinced the board not to sack him. He got one more season, but for 40 minutes against the Melbourne Storm, this is where the Tigers are so frustrating. For 40 minutes against Melbourne, they looked outstanding.
They beat
but then
the
they pulled the
Roosters.
handbrake and started to... It's as though they were worried about the scoreboard. Yeah.